line of research. I won't spend too much time introducing her because she has a few slides I saw last time that will talk about her experience as a researcher over the years. But again, we conducted this great review together. I mean, she really spearheaded. She's an expert in this program review, which I didn't know about the existence, but they are fundamental in determining approaches, new approaches to everything. In this case, digital health and obesity. So, please welcome Dr. Palacios.
Okay, everyone. So first, I'm here at FIU, but this is my first time in this building. I'm glad I texted Jessica last night because I was going to go to the main campus and start walking. So today I'm going to talk about this Coulter review, looking at digital and technology-driven interventions used for obesity treatment. But before, I wanted to talk a little bit about myself because I see a lot of young students, and it's always good to see how people progress over time and the different paths they take. All right, so I started my Bachelor's of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics from Venezuela, so far away. Then I did my Master's, my Ph.D., and my postdoc at Purdue in Nutritional Science. So the opposite. I went from 80 degrees to minus 40 the first year, so that was pretty bad. Then for opportunities that came up, I was an assistant and associate professor at the nutrition program in University of Puerto Rico. I think we're now world people, and people we change. And then I've been at FIU since 2017, and I'm a professor and the chair of nutrition and dietetics in our department. So at FIU, I've been involved in several things. One of the things was this initiative that I created. Is called the Obesity Research Working Group, and in that initiative, that's where I met Jessica. And since then, we've been doing publications. We already did a project, and we have submitted several R01s. Hopefully, this one will get funded. But we are doing, we've been doing this obesity symposium every year to get to know each other. And now we have a great multidisciplinary team from that symposium that we created, and we start learning about each other. And so now we have a team of an expert in physical activity, Jessica in biomedical engineer, and then myself. So, and other members of our working group have also collaborated to start doing more things. And recently there was a training grant that was awarded, then removed because of DEI and health disparities. And then they submitted again, and it's within 5 different colleges at FIU to do obesity research training for undergrad students. So if you're still undergrad next year and we get funded, you may be able to get involved in that. But I also have extensive consultation with the WHO and the PAHO, and particularly for WHO, this is part of what I'm going to talk today. And then I've also, I was involved in the scientific committee for the dietary guidelines for Americans. This is guidelines that are published every 5 years, and every 5 years they select a different scientific committee to inform the guidelines. And some of the things that I'm going to talk today has to do with the process of doing a guideline for a country or for the world. And so, unfortunately, the recent guidelines did not use our report because it had a health equity, and now that's forbidden apparently. Okay, so what's my research focus? Mainly, I do interventions to improve bone and body composition. And I use functional food supplements, but I also use digital interventions. And so I have developed apps and websites, and we're working with wearables to look at, particularly during the times when there is greater weight gain, infancy and college students, the college years. So you probably all could see that when you started college and you left the home and the school environment, you probably started gaining weight. And so that's weight that is not usually lost later in life. So you kind of build and you keep going. And so those are the times that I'm most interested in doing interventions to prevent that rapid weight gain that occurs during these periods of time. But I'm also being interested in looking more into the ultra-processed foods and how, what's in those foods and why it leads to obesity and weight gain. And so I've done several projects on that. And then more recently, I'm working with Jessica on the optics and obesity and the wearables and why there is so much error from the errors when you have a lot of body fat. And so hopefully we'll get funded to continue that. So I have several labs at FIU. I'm very fortunate to be able to get money and build these labs. So the first one is the DEXA lab, where we have the gold standard for measuring body composition. I usually get emails from students and people, how can I get a DEXA? No, sorry, this is for research. I cannot just do it for people. The DEXA allows us to get very detailed information on your bone, your lean mass, your fat mass, by sections, by trunk, by the abdominal. So it's very, very specific. And we can do it for whole body, but we can also do it for the spine, in case people are looking at osteoporosis, where that's not my interest, but you can still do the spine and get more information for women and older men who are going through osteoporosis. I also have the nutritional assessment lab, in which we have bioimpedance, which is this one here, that a current goes through your body and measures the resistance to fat. And so that gives you a percent fat. The thing is that when you do that kind of bioimpedance, if you consume a lot of water, or then the water can have some resistance, and then you may have, the results may not be very accurate. But we still do it because it's easier than DEXA. DEXA requires a radiologist, an approval from the physician. It requires so much that this is just easier to do with day to day. And then we can do all sorts of anthropometrics. We also look at long bones and waist circumference and other measurements of anthropometrics. Can you see the figures well? Can we lower the lights maybe? Or do we need them for the video? If not, that's okay. I mean, it just looks better.
Can you try, is there a switch on there?
Okay, better. I think, okay. I think the images look better. So I'll go back to the DEXA scan. And we have all these colorful things because we're usually doing children. And so that they have to stay quiet for like 10 minutes without moving or anything. And so on the top of the ceiling, we have the periodic table, and we ask them to look for the nutrients that are important for bone so that they can stay still for 10 minutes, which is, when you're having a 10-year-old child, it's a challenge. Okay, so then these are the body composition measurements that we can also do. And then we can also get some blood and blood pressure. And we also have a food diet prep lab in which we can customize supplements, nutritional products to give participants. And so, for example, this is the Metabone trial. We were combining fiber with calcium and other things for different treatments that we had. We have different groups, and everyone had a different color, so that we can prepare these special functional foods or supplements to give our participants. We also have the wet lab because we collect urine, we collect feces, we collect saliva, we collect blood to do a myriad of biomarkers to see how our interventions are affecting the body. Then we have 2 teaching labs that we use it specifically for students, but we have done also educational nutritional interventions in these labs because we have 7 kitchens, and sometimes we, as a result of one of our studies, we can have the students come and maybe do a cooking lesson as part of the payment for being part of the study, or just do a nutrition education class. And so it's for teaching, but we also do it for our interventions. And then we also have a food science lab that's mainly for teaching our I don't know, maybe, we have a core curriculum class called nutrition science. It's HU in 2000, it's fun, and you learn about nutrition and your diet and your body composition. We actually measure the in-body so in case you know students that are taking, their core curriculum, we have one of those classes, and then you go into this lab and you do little experiments with milk and other products to look at how foods react and get some information on your diet as well. Okay, so today I'm gonna go deeply into this Cochrane review. Cochrane is a type of meta-analysis, and this is the basis for all WHO guidelines. Every time and I've worked with the WHO for like 20 years on developing different guidelines. All their guidelines are based on this methodology. So I went through a lot of training. I've done at least 4 of these Cochrane reviews, and you have to update every 2 years. So Jessica and Andres will have to update this in a few years because new studies are coming, and the guidelines, they make changes to the guideline. And so following this very specific methodology, which you have to submit a protocol, you get peer review, then you start doing the actual meta-analysis, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And why we're doing this, because the WHO was preparing their guidelines for the management of obesity in children. And so they commissioned these guidelines to experts in the field to then inform their guidelines. And actually they are still in the process because there were many topics that they were reviewing, and we were the first ones to submit our project. So what did we do? And this is just a small component of a big guideline that they are developing. What we did was do a meta-analysis on the effects of digital health interventions to manage obesity. Just manage, not prevent. It was management. And so when we look at the data, we decided to have 2 groups. One that combined the conventional care, maybe with the pediatrician, endocrinologist, a nutritionist, with the digital health compared to just the regular intervention, or digital versus your multidisciplinary team that usually treats children with obesity. So it's important because one was like a companion to the intervention, to the typical clinical intervention. The other one was just this versus the regular, okay? So we had to divide it because it's different. You know, if you're getting all these intervention from the physician, the psychologist, the dietitian, it's different from just getting it through a digital component. So we wanted to differentiate those. So what does the WHO define, how it defines the digital health intervention? It is a discrete functionality of digital technology that is applied to achieve health objectives and is implemented within digital health applications and information and communication technology. So it's very broad, so we had to include any kind of digital intervention, which had some limitations, and I will talk about that. So what we did, we used the Cochrane meta-analysis is totally online, and you can see the entire, there are like hundreds of chapters and method, so like very specific methodology that you have to follow. So these are all the search methods: Medline, Cochrane Central, and CINAHL. Then we also look at trials registry, where people register their trials before, and we just look at all the studies available that had some sort of randomized control trial. So we only included, which is the gold standard for assessing any kind of intervention. So we only included children that had obesity. So this is the typical curve for, maybe you remember when you were going to the pediatrician, and this is where you have your age and you have your BMI. And so this is the underweight people, this is the healthy weight individuals, the overweight, and those that are above are the ones with obesity. So we only included trials that said that they look at children that had obesity defined as, usually they use the WHO guidelines or growth charts for that. What kind of interventions we included? Well, based on the WHO definition, we had to include many types of interventions. Wearables or implantable devices, mobile applications, web-based interventions, text messages, XR gaming, telemedicine, interactive voice response. They're very different between each other. But we had to include all of them, and we were thinking if we have enough studies, we can look at the effects of each one. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So these are the main outcomes that we look at: BMI, weight, anthropometric measurements, adiposity. We did look at other things, other outcomes, but these were like our main outcomes that I will be presenting today. And then there is a very detailed way of assessing the risk. Risk of bias, how well they generated this random sequence, how well they blinded participants, how well they reported the results. Not all the clinical trials are the same. Some people may have introduced some bias into a study, and so we have to really assess that carefully. And so we use the GRADE handbook to review that bias, the risk of bias, consistency of effect, imprecision, indirectness, and then we said, okay, this is high, we are very confident, or very low, we're a little confident on our results. And so that's important because we have to grade our results. Okay, so I'm gonna go through our results. We found about 6,000 records. Then after we removed some duplicates, then we screened 3,900. And so I think Andres, you were part of it, and we have Ashma as well. And so we had to screen a lot of these abstracts. Then we finally kept 135 studies that met the eligibility, but at the end, after reviewing everything, we could only include 15 trials. So that was unfortunate because with 15 trials, we cannot do that much. So where were those 15 studies? Most of them were in the US, and because this was commissioned by the WHO, we had to produce a table looking at the WHO regions. So none in Africa or the Middle East. Most were in North America, one in Southeast Asia, a few in Europe, and then just Western Pacific, just two. And these are the WHO regions, so we just followed what they wanted us to do. So most of the studies were in adolescents, and it's typical because that's who they can manage technology. Smaller kids may not be able to even have a phone or have access to those things. So most were in adolescents, 13 studies, and then 7 studies included smaller children, but they also included adolescents, and none were done specifically in smaller children. Most were delivered to both the parents and the children, since most, maybe telehealth is not easy for the child to do it on their own, and some of these websites, they had access both. 9 were directly on the children, and there were those that had maybe an app or an XR gaming. Like, you go into a bike and you have a video and you have motivation and then you bike. So that's why it was directly to the children. And then just 1 directly to the parent, and those were the smaller children. Okay, so this is the risk of bias that I was telling you. I'm just gonna give you the overall. The random sequence generation, if it's a lot of green, it's good. If it's a lot of red, it's bad. And so the blinding of participants was the hardest part, because if you're having an extra gaming, you know who's in the intervention. And so it's just part of the type of trial. When will you be able to be very blinded? When you are giving a supplement, in which, like for example, the one that I showed you before, that I was able to just have the lids with different colors. Nobody knew what it was. And so that's an easy one. Or you have a pill and you have 2 different pills, and one has vitamin D and the other one doesn't have vitamin D. That's an easy one to be blinded. But when you're giving this type of intervention, that you're giving them an app, you're giving them a bike for them to run, it may be difficult to do blinding of everyone. Okay, so we had 2 comparisons. One looking at digital intervention with the clinical care versus just clinical care, all right? And the second one was digital intervention alone versus clinical care alone, okay? And so we had 8 studies in comparison 1 and 7 studies in comparison 2. So this very limited number of studies made it even worse because we had to differentiate between the 2 comparisons. So these are the studies included in comparison. Sorry, there should be 8 over there. Sorry. Most of them were short term, like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and only 3 were considered long term. Anything with weight requires time. I know that now with Ozempic and GLP-1, you can do quicker, but then you can also go quicker, go back to your original weight. Okay, so don't be fooled about that. This takes time. Okay, and so then we see that the studies are not very long term. Most were, again, adolescents. When we're doing an intervention that we're changing behavior, it is important to take into consideration the theory or framework of the behavior. And so we did report if they had some behavior theory behind their intervention. And then look at the type of digital intervention. All right, we had 3 that were only telehealth. Then we had telehealth plus something else. We had telehealth plus web-based, telehealth plus mobile app plus text messages, telehealth plus wearable tracking device, and then just a text message. And then the typical components, any kind of intervention for obesity, you have to include diet and physical activity because diet is where the energy intake comes in, and then physical activity, energy, energy going out, and so we need both. Not all of them had both, and so it's also an important consideration that brings some noise to the results. Okay, so these are, I'm gonna show you forest plots. That's what we do for when we are looking at meta-analysis. And meta-analysis means that we're pulling all the data, the raw data from all the studies. And I'm gonna show you only the ones that had at least 2 participants, 2 studies. Most of them only had 1, and so we couldn't do much. So here we have the 2 studies that were included, then the number of participants, and then if it's touching this line, then it's not significant. And so here we see only 2 studies, and this is the risk of bias, so we have an idea how well those studies were. And so looking at the digital intervention combined with clinical care versus clinical care, this is BMI score. We didn't see any effects, but again, 2 studies only. Here we're looking at BMI in kilograms per meter squared because some studies did report that. Again, we have 2 studies here, and we see no effects of the digital intervention versus combined with the clinical care versus just clinical care. Here we're looking at waist circumference, so just a little measure that you do here in the waist. We had 3 studies, and there's maybe something there, but not significant. And then we have a great result, fat mass. At the end, that's what we want to get rid of, fat mass. Fat mass is the amount of fat that you have in your body. And so maybe if you are doing exercise, you may be replacing fat for lean mass, and so maybe you don't see result in your BMI, because at the end BMI is weight over height squared. And so if you may be losing weight from fat, but maybe you are increasing lean mass. And so BMI is not really a good measure when you are looking at effects of an intervention on body weight. But fat mass is, you are mobilizing your fat, eventually you'll reduce size. And that's what we want, to get rid of the fat that you have in the body. So we did see that the 3 studies, again, very limited sample size, the 3 studies did show that using a digital intervention combined with the clinical care help reduce fat mass. So for me, this is the most important component because that's what we want. We want to reduce fat mass. So we're getting something interesting here. The other results were not significant, so I'm not even showing it, or only had 1 participant. Okay, so this is the second one when we had the digital alone versus the clinical care alone. So we have all these studies, these are a little bit longer, so this is good. We have more time to intervene. Again, adolescents, but we only had one study that looked at the behavior framework theory. And then here we have a little bit different type of interventions. We have exergaming, we had 2 with exergaming, then we have wearable tracking device plus mobile app, then we have wearable tracking device, then we have just mobile app, and then telehealth. So it's very different. We're lumping everything together, which is not ideal, but that's what we got, and so we had to increase and put them all together. Okay, so these are our results. This is BMI C-score change at the end of the intervention period, and we had 3 studies and nothing there. Then we have BMI C-score at the end of the study, not the change. When you're doing meta-analysis, you have to use whatever the studies report. And we did actually reach out to the authors to give us a little bit more raw data, but they didn't respond. And so sometimes we just have to use with whatever they report in their publication. And some, they report the change in the BMI, some reported just the BMI at the end of the study. And so we couldn't combine that data. It will be perfect to be able to combine these 3 studies with these 3 studies, but to have 6 studies on BMI, but they reported the data differently and they didn't respond to our request. And so we couldn't put them together. And so we see also no results in BMI, but again, as I was telling you, BMI, you're not seeing, if you're increasing exercise, you're gonna may get heavier because you have more lean mass, and lean mass weighs more than fat. And so BMI is not very good but it's what most studies reported. This is BMI percentile at the end of the study. Again, no results, no significant results. And most of the studies did not report fat mass or waist circumference or anything else that we could look at. So definitely we probably need to update this in a few years to get more data, because more studies are coming out for sure. And actually, if we look at the full records, there are 8 trials that were ongoing when we did this. And so when those trials are done, and usually it takes years to get finalize everybody, recruit everyone, do the intervention, and then publish our results. So it takes time. So when we get more studies, then we can update and then maybe get more results. And then we also have some trials that were awaiting classification. And I want to let you know what it is this. We had some trials that were not that clear, and Cochrane made us remove those trials and contact the authors. The authors never responded, but because they were not clear if they included some of the methodology. So they made us change. We received like 50 pages of comments to our review. So we ended up going from 20 studies originally included to 15 because they said, okay, this study, they did not do this, so you have to remove it. And so we ended up having even less participants, studies. So one of the things that WHO was interested is to see is because the way they work at WHO, they need to make sure that whatever they're doing is safe. And so they asked us to look at if is this safe? And we did look at, because some of these are, they're using a phone, they're using a wearable. Could they be more sedentary because they're using a digital intervention, or they're being more sedentary, or then because they're using a digital technology, maybe they're looking more at social media or things like that, but none of the studies reported anything, so we couldn't tell much about it. So the main limitations were, most of the studies that we had to exclude, we excluded about 38 studies because they also included overweight children. And WHO was very interested in only doing obesity for management and not prevention. And so we ended up removing a lot of the studies. So maybe if we include those overweight children, we may get 40 studies in total, so that may increase our sample size. We didn't have enough trials to do the sub-analysis by type of digital intervention. It's not the same at telehealth that an extra gaming and an app, not the same. So this is a huge limitation because we just have to put everything together. And most trials, they not follow up children over time. And we know that any obesity intervention that does not lead to behavioral change will lead to weight gain. We have seen it, we've seen it with GLP-1. 2 years later, they gain weight again. We've seen it for bariatric surgery. 2 years after the bariatric surgery, they are again back to their regular weight. And so all these things require follow-up, because if you don't change behavior, that's why it was important to include the theory behind the intervention, because if you don't change behavior, then you don't get real change, because you go back to your original ways of how you got there. So in conclusion, the digital intervention combined with conventional care, or alone just because there were some trends and it is safe, may reduce obesity-related outcomes or may help with the management of obesity, since we saw a very good decrease in fat mass, and that was clinical relevant, and that's what we want. Fat mass is definitely what we want to see the results. And so the thing is that the clinical significance, we try, since we only have few studies, we cannot say that much, but because it's safe, we could say that it could be used in the real world in clinical practice. So that's all I have for you guys.
So great. So we thank you for us. Well, we are open for questions. Any questions? The audience? Yep.
If you were to do a study of your own, do you know what digital intervention you would use that would have the greatest result for fat mass? Since you said fat
Okay.
mass would be like
Yes,
the best outcome.
great result. And I have done interventions. So we did one intervention using an app among college students. This was actually an app that was developed part of the capstone for computer science here at FIU. And with the students, for 5 years, we developed this app called Snackability. And the app will scan the snack that you were gonna eat, and it will tell you from 1 to 11 how healthy that snack was. And so if you're in the vending machine, you can just take a picture, scan the snack, and it will tell you, oh, from 1 to 10, how good that snack is. Because not all the snacks are the same. Some snacks are really bad, but some snacks are really good. And so using that app, we saw some changes, but COVID hit, and so we had to do the study during that time, and so people were at home, and so we did see some trends. The students, maybe we didn't have enough time to see the changes in weight, but we did see that it helped improve their diet. But it was just one component of the diet, and we only intervene on that. We didn't want to intervene in anything else. We just wanted to see if you got information on healthy snacks, what will you do? The one that I'm hoping I can get money, I submitted a grant to the USDA, and we're gonna have a combination of a website with social media, with changing the vending machines on campus, hopefully, and not one intervention would work, and we're gonna combine, because we have done pieces of different interventions, and so we already know about this, we already know, now we're gonna combine. So having a website to have exactly information on healthy snacks, then transforming the environment, because you can have all the information, but when you go to the vending machines, you only get really bad choices, options. And so changing the environment, giving them an education and having access to 24/7 information on healthy diets. And so hopefully when we combine all those components, we'll get more effects. But I also completed recently a trial in which we gave mothers a website to learn about how well they were feeding their babies. Again, I like to look at interventions when you are increasing weight gain the quickest. And so infancy and college years is what I like to use because that's when we get changes and we can see the impact. So I gave this website. In the website, so I didn't develop it as an app because the app, I had a really bad experience with the snackability because then you have to update in the App Store and Google Play and it was just a mess. So I decided to do a website that you can download it in your phone as an app, but it's a website. And in that one, we gave mothers the ask to complete a short questionnaire of what they were feeding their babies, and we gave them automatic results. You are giving too much milk. You're not getting too much. You're not getting enough fruits and vegetables. And so we gave them suggestions. Your baby should be eating this amount, and this amount of milk, and this amount of fruits and vegetables. And we did see significant effects. The moms in the babies in the intervention had less rapid weight gain. They had better diet, and the moms really liked having automatic results. And we also had a growth chart so they can monitor how well their baby was going, and we had prompts. Hey, your baby's gaining too much weight. Talk to your doctor, to the pediatrician. And so that information, empowering the mothers with the information and with feedback. Do this, do that. We did see significant results. So it depends on the population, it depends on, but I think a more combining several, and we also did calls and we gave them text messages. So digital alone may not be good enough. You may need a more human component and calling them and checking with them and how you're doing. But I think digital can help really be available 24/7, and particularly when we have so much disinformation out there, and now everybody's an expert in TikTok and Instagram on diet and physical activity, and so having a reliable source that you can go and fact check some of this information that you're getting. How many of you have received in TikTok and Instagram information about the juice diet? Or the guava diet? Or what's the other one, the sour sop? Now sour sop apparently is the best food ever. Yeah. So I'm getting all the time information about, hey, I heard about the juice diet, should I do it? Like, no, don't do the juice diet. I'll tell you why not do the juice diet, because when you drink your calories, the signals from your stomach to your brain, they don't light up. When you eat a solid calorie, those signals do light up and send your brain. And so you can drink 500 calories in Coke and not get any signal. You can get the same 500 calories from a jelly bean or candy, and you'll get those signals. And so if you get those signals, you feel like, oh, I ate too much. Like if you eat a big piece of cake, you're like, maybe I should eat less at dinner because I had a really big cake. But if you have the same calories in the form of a liquid, you don't get that signal, and so you continue eating as you are. And so that compensation that you do is important. You need to know, you need to feel like, I ate too much, let me eat less at dinner or the next meal. When you drink that those calories, you don't get that signal. And so you want that signal. So make sure if you're gonna have sugar or calories, make sure it's solid so that you can get the signal and then you can compensate your next meal. Yes.
So you were talking about how the fat content is usually more useful information than the BMI.
Yeah.
And then earlier you were saying you have a machine with the current to like measure the fat content.
Yeah.
But still I feel like BMI is all I hear about, like the standard still. Is there like movement on that to like look at fat content more? Because that would be way more useful, right?
So more scales are coming up that are more easy to purchase. But before they were, you saw the big machine. And actually, we are starting a collaboration at Nicholas, looking at their obesity treatment clinic. And they started doing the in-body like a year ago. This has been for a long time. And so this is clinical practice. And they've been seeing children for obesity treatment for like 10 years. And they just started a year ago. And so some of these machines, they don't get put into clinical practice soon enough. Now the nutritionist over there, we went there and she showed us, yes, now we have an in-body. I have to take my patient over there because we just have one in the entire clinic. The entire hospital, we just want in-body to measure body composition. And so it takes time to get into clinical practice. But there are many, now they're coming more of these scales. The thing is that because they are easy, they have more error.
Yeah.
And so we know that if you have to void before doing it, you have to avoid drinking water for 2 hours, so to be able to get some accurate information. But yes, all these machines, all this technology takes time to translate into clinical practice, so they take time. But yes, and that's an easy one, body weight, weight and height. Everybody has weight and height, not everybody has percent fat, but we should. Yes.
It's really cool. I know this review was, the follow-up was fairly limited, but I wonder what's known about kind of acute versus long-term effects of, say, intervention, especially like in adolescents. Do you see any differences, say, in college weight gain due to interventions in adolescents?
I don't think they are available, but I will check. That would maybe something interesting to look at. I will probably, and I'm doing interventions in college students, so I can probably ask them as well if they had something. But long-term interventions, NIH funds you for 5 years, and so to get a follow-up, oh my God, it's so difficult. And so many studies stay for, you don't follow up. But now, we can look at the youth soul. I don't know if you heard about the study of Latinos. They have a youth component, and they are following children. You know what? There are several long-term follow-up studies. I'm pretty sure there are studies. I just haven't reviewed them. But we have good longitudinal try a longitudinal study. There are several. I will check. That's a good question. I will check. Yes.
Glucose and cholesterol are two important components that you wanted to monitor together with BMI and gas, fat component. The question is, if you put in a balance genetic predisposition with digital intervention, how these two factors may impact in the final result?
That's a big thing. You may mess up the results when you combine kids that may not have, they may already have a genetic predisposition. The studies didn't, I don't remember the studies reporting that, but I'm pretty sure that influences the results. If you have some kids that whatever you do, they're not gonna lose weight, that may, and the studies that we review, I don't remember seeing them in a subset that did respond, they saw this. And actually, Coulter doesn't allow us to do that kind of sub-analysis when we don't have enough studies. But maybe that impacts. But the genetic predisposition is a minority. I mean, most people do respond, and so sometimes we like to say, okay, they have a genetic disposition. Most children do not. Most children are regular and they do treat. But if you're treating the child and you don't change the environment of the house, then sometimes it feels like you're blaming it on genetics, and it may not be true. It may be just the environment. Both parents have obesity and they bring their child to obesity treatment, but they don't change what the parents are doing. Then the child, when he goes, they're telling them to eat fruits and vegetables, but they're not served fruits and vegetables at dinner or lunch. And so, but
Yeah, but intervention is important, very important compared to.
definitely. But I think the environment is also, that's why the USDA grant that I submitted, I'm changing the environment, because I can tell the students, eat healthy snacks, but if they don't find healthy snacks, And so that's one of the things that we've been stressing more about, making sure that you have the correct environment. And actually, we did look at a study a few years ago among adolescents, among college students, and the ones that reported having more availability of unhealthy snacks were eating more unhealthy snacks and have had more obesity. And so the environment is a big, so we have to intervene. So no intervention is better if you don't change the environment. Like the school lunch program, if you don't have the healthy foods available in your school, in your college, then there's so much you can do.
Actually, at the school, at the student cafeteria, there is a bar in front of, a glass bar in front of the fruits. So you can't access it, you have to ask for it. So nobody goes and asks for the food. But if you go to the sweets
The
section,
ice
it's like, what
is
else?
open, yeah,
So you need to do something about that, because they always have glass in it, yeah.
Yeah, the environment is, okay, yes.
Hi, thank you for the great talk. Just wondering that, assuming that there's a neural activity could be related to.
I can hear, sorry.
Assuming that neurocircuit activities could be related to treatment responses, but I was wondering if you think that, the children's different response to physical intervention to traditional might be related to different neurocircuit activity, or rather the amplitude or magnitude of responses to the same neurocircuit activity. What do you think about that?
For sure. I mean, because we only had so limited number of studies, yes, exergaming may be very different than telehealth. And the magnitude and the type, definitely, because the exergaming, for example, was so many minutes of vigorous exercise. The telehealth was just advising on eat fruits and vegetables, do more exercise. Very different magnitude and of the intervention. So we do need better, be able to have enough of each one so that we can look at the effect of each one and the size. I don't know, that's what you were asking?
Yeah, so I was rather thinking that it's same or different neurobiological circuit that can be involved in different interventions or business.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean,
Like reward system or because physical intervention and traditional intervention can be impacting different circuit activity in the brain, or they're impacting the same circuit activity but in a different level. So I was wondering what you think about that.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know about that. I will have to check more about that. It may, yeah, that's why maybe a psychologist being part of the group may help. And I do, for the infant intervention, I do have a psychologist involved to make sure. But yeah, it may be different by age group as well. The reward for adolescent may be very different for an adult and for a child. But that's very interesting. I haven't answered
You had a question.
I have a question about the environment. Do you think that the places where these studies were performed has an effect on the results? For example, like, I know different regions have different diets. So is that something that you guys looked into, or
Yes.
did you just kind of all group them together?
Yeah, they were all come together and we didn't look at specific the type of diet, but for sure. We know from other studies that, for example, we know from individuals that come to the U.S. and acculturate to the U.S., they have worse outcomes. So it seems like traditional diets from middle, low-income countries are better than the ultra-processed food environment of the U.S. So I'm pretty sure that affects us well. But they all had obesity to start with, and their diet counseling was very similar across the board. They were all looking at increasing more fruits and vegetables, capping calories, but we know that even capping calories, ultra-processed foods with the same calories as non-ultra-processed foods do impact more body weight. And so yes, the environment in certain countries may have an influence. I don't think we have a good grasp on that. But I don't know if you've seen some of the studies of the ultra-processed. So, like, they will feed people the same amount of calories, 2,000 calories of ultra-processed foods, 2,000 calories of non-ultra-processed foods, and the ones you consuming the same amount of calories, the ultra-processed foods, they gain weight. The other ones did not. And so there's something about the ultra processed food, some components that we're still learning. All these plastics or additives or preservatives that are in ultra processed may be affecting us. So I know it's not direct response to your question because I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it does because the level of the diet, the type of diet you eat, it has a big influence.
As dietitians, how do you like tell people what to change, like how to not eat ultra processed foods? Like how do you kind of intervene on that?
Okay, well, that's why I intervene with snacks because that's when you eat the most ultra processed. And so, because usually, I mean, everybody eats differently, but maybe breakfast you eat a yogurt or you eat something at home. If you're eating Captain Crunch, yes, that's an ultra processed, so try to go to a more low sugary, less processed granola type of cereal. But snacks usually are very ultra processed. We've seen, I mean, it is out of the diet, the component that is more ultra processed compared to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so that's where we try to intervene the most because it's the easiest to change among people. I mean, if you're not changing your entire lunch, you're eating your same diet, but maybe intervening on the snacks. And so what I tell the students is bring it from home, buy or go to the shopping, grocery store. If you're in a dorm, buy your own healthy snacks and bring them. I bring my meal and my snacks every day because I cannot eat in the vending machines or outside the restaurant. So for snacks, that's why I am intervening in snacks because that's where we see the most ultra processed. So that's where I would say, hey, bring it from home. If you can.
With the exit of the United States from the World Health Organization this year, how does that affect the process of creating the guidelines and the inclusion of studies made in the United States?
Okay, I don't think that's gonna be affected, and I think I'm gonna still work for them. It's just that the US is not supporting financially
Okay.
WHO. So WHO is a organization that receives money from all the countries. And what they do is because it is, they don't have a fund of their own. They depend on the funds that come from the different countries that are members. And so what they do is because they're funded by the members countries, they are mandated to do what the countries need. And so that's why many countries requested the WHO, we need guidance for obesity treatment for children. That's why they're doing that. But this changes every administration. So maybe the next administration will be part of it to the WHO. And I've been working with them nonstop, even though we have stopped being a member. Because they will still include the US studies, they will still ask consultants from the US to work on them. So it's more political than you think.
Thank you.
Yes.
So it's pretty prevalent that most organic foods and vegetables are more expensive than like the ultra processed snacks and other things that are on the shelf. Are any organizations or is anyone doing anything to at least equalize these costs?
I don't know, but that's a good thing. However, there are less expensive options to eat fruits and vegetables. So canned vegetables, canned fruits, frozen vegetables, they're much cheaper and they still have the benefits. And so if you cannot afford to buy a bag of grapes, then go first buy something from your local store that is not from another country. And then if you can, there are low sodium and low sugar canned and frozen options. But yeah, those are a little bit harder to bring to school or to move around. But there are, I mean, like for example, there are the mandarins in a little cup that have less sugar. And so at least you're getting some fruits, and some of them are no sugar. Or the applesauce, they are applesauce without sugar. So there are options, but yeah, the expense, I mean, now the dietary guidelines that came out, they are very aggressive in terms of removing ultra process. So that's something that the government has to do, because that's the entire food system, and that's out of my scope. But yeah, but that is a concern, the higher cost. But at the end, it's more expensive to treat obesity than to eat healthy every day. And so at the end, you spend, I don't know if your insurance doesn't cover GLP-1, oh my God, that's very expensive. And so getting those injections or the pills or whatever, and so better invest in every day than having to invest in so much for diabetes, for obesity, for hypertension. And so in your time, I mean, the time that you have to go to the doctor, the time that you have to go and get the medicine and do this and do that, at the end, it's worth eating healthier every day than having to go rely on those sources.
And have you done any study on people who are more of like a lower cost system? Because I don't know, I haven't researched, but what I've known is they're more like on the overweight side than people who, are more financially, like.
Yes, so we recently did a study at WIC program. WIC, if you're not familiar, WIC is the program for low-income families, for the moms while they're pregnant and their children. And they receive money to purchase a defined list of foods during pregnancy, and then while they're breastfeeding, they also include money for the mom to purchase their food, or if they're lactating, they include vouchers to get the formula, if they're not lactating, and up to 5 years of age. And so that program, we have done interventions. We think that program were the lowest of the lowest income in the U.S., and we have seen, because the WIC program does provide money to purchase fruits and vegetables, and when we intervene and educate on how important that is, then they eat, and then we do see results. So because we have really good financial programs for food security, we have SNAP as well, and then WIC. Through them, we have seen that those people that receive those benefits, they do have better diet than the low income that do not receive those benefits. And so we do have at least some programs to make sure that the lowest income can access some fruits and vegetables, which are the most expensive at the end. So yes, so being part of those programs are great because you're limited. You have to purchase this amount, and if you are purchasing more milk, they will tell you no, it's not covered. You can only buy fruits and vegetables, and so it's a motivation, and then they eat more and healthier.
All right, I think we are at the hour. Do you have any study where you need this beautiful population?
Well, we just, do we have freshman students here? Okay, so I don't know if you heard about the Crunch study, but we already recruited, we needed the students we recruited them before they started for the first 2 weeks of college. And so now we're gonna go, if you're part of the Crunch study, do we have anybody from the Crunch study? You are, okay, so you probably got an email yesterday to do or you're gonna get it this next week, an email to look at your second visit. So what we're doing is we're looking at diet and stress, sleep, physical activity, and then we weighed everyone at the beginning of their freshman year, and then we're doing it again at the end of the academic year, so sometime in March, in April, to see what led to weight gain in the students. So, but if we get the USDA grant, we will need a lot of students, and you probably hear from us, and I'll let you know so that we can get more students on board for that grant.
And if you have any ideas and you want to contact Dr. Palacios in terms of engineering, I mean, you're engineering students, so we think about building stuff. So if you have any desire to move forward with this line of research, please contact us and contact Dr. Palacios or myself, and we'll be happy to hear your thoughts. Okay?
And this was a great discussion. I love it.